Welcome everyone to our March Coffee Chat. I am Laura Knutson-Murray. I am the GIS Coordinator and Community Outreach Assistant for IrisBG. With us today is Shanna Jones, the Social Media and Community Outreach Assistant. And on the call with us today is Øyvind Rusten, who is our founder and CEO. Just know that our recording and presentation and other materials from today will be available in the Knowledge Library. As with all of our coffee chats, they can be found under the category Articles and Presentations. You can follow the topic Coffee Chats and be notified via email anytime something new is published. Just to let you know, we have a forum that covers different topics that you are allowed to follow and post to. And that space is for you to use to ask questions of each other and share great ideas with the community. And these coffee chats are for you. If there's a topic you would like to cover or to have us cover, just get in touch with us. It can be a demonstration of the functionality of IrisBG or anything big or small. Just get in touch with us. Our next coffee chat is about propagation, and it will be given by Peter Brownless, who is the garden supervisor at the Royal Botanic Garden, Edinburgh. Save the date for that. It'll be a great presentation. And here is just a map of where all of the community is coming from this month. It's great to see so many of you from different countries. Thanks for signing up. And we will quick launch our regular poll. We have just a question to ask about your experience with the index Seminum, so the seed index in Latin is what that is. Do you use the store module within IrisBG for your index Seminum? Yes or no? There are two questions on this. So then the second question is, do you use the web store with your index Seminum? So the indexseminum.org. Looks like most people don't. We have a few people who do use it, but most of us don't use the index Seminum yet. And following that, people are here to learn about it, but aren't using the web store yet. And we could launch real quick your experience with IrisBG. What is your level of experience using Iris? Are you a novice, intermediate, advanced, or are you trying out the trial? 46% of us are intermediate users, 30 are advanced, and 23 are novice. So great, thank you for taking our poll. Okay, and our agenda today, we have a great presentation, iNaturalist Meets IrisBG, Index Seminum and Citizen Science by Professor David Pirie and Professor Heidi Andersen, who are also both curators at Bergen University Gardens in Norway. I will turn the presentation over to you.
Great. Yes. The presentation, if you want to refer back to it, is available on Figshare, and I think Laura, you're going to be making it available afterwards as well. So feel free to look back and try and work out what it was that I failed to say if I didn't see my notes. Thank you very much for the invitation to present here. Heidi and I are going to be talking about basically about getting field data from observations of plants in the field into IrisBG, but it's going to raise a few kind of general issues relating to various things, open science and names databases that I hope are going to be of general interest, and I'll be really intrigued to see what kind of input we can get from all of you at the end. So this unintentional selfie is a view of me with my secondary data collection tool in the field, which is the notebook, which I still use because I'm paranoid about dropping my primary mode of data collection into a pond. That, of course, is the phone, which has fallen into the grass. I don't know how many of you take all of your notes with pencil and paper and then type them into a spreadsheet afterwards to get them into Iris or into your specimen database or whatever it is. But of course, manual data entry is time consuming and it is error prone, and it is well worth avoiding if you can. And there are a number of tools which I think will be familiar to some of you, and these are just a few examples. There will be many more since the time I made this slide, I would imagine, which they look on the face of it a bit like kind of social media type affairs. These are platforms which have been put up there for sharing observations of plants or other organisms in the field, and some of them have got a lot of kind of communications gizmos behind the the hood, and some of them have got identification tools for getting at names of your organisms. That's all well and good, but what they actually present to the working botanist is a means of collecting data. And the most familiar one to me, and one of the more popular ones I would think, is iNaturalist. And how it works, for those who are not already familiar with this kind of thing, is you have an app on your and you could take a picture, and it harvests all of the tasty metadata that is collected with your phone at the same time. So it's got the exact time and the date when you have made the observation. You've got your GPS turned on, and it will zoom in on the precise location. And you can include all sorts of other bits of information at the same time. But that is the main thing. And that's then already on your phone. And you don't have to type in anything. And at that point, so that this information you can upload it to the cloud and share the information along with your identification of whatever you've seen. And you could even use the tool which tries to identify the thing based on similarity, and you might even get an accurate ID. But you can post this to the community, and they can all look at what you've seen and come in with their own identifications and generally enjoy what you've got out there. And that's great. That's when it's the app itself is very easy to use, and when you go onto the web page, you can see all the various different bits of information that are stored. Let's quickly zip through that. So first, we've got the name, and the name is then derived from a database. So it is it's standardized. There's no getting the spelling wrong. There is the collaborative identification, which I mentioned. So somebody will come along and they will either confirm, or they'll come up with a different ID, and these people will be more or less qualified to do so. But in my experience, they do a decent job, and you come to an agreement on what you've seen. So here's the locality data, which displayed on a map, so you can see that it should be roughly right. You can add additional information, such as Darwin Core standard data format information of the kind that you'd want for a herbarium specimen, for example, such as all the collectors, the collector number, and who was the primary collector. Yeah. You can also add tags to your observation or to the images that you're uploading. And this can be useful for different ways for searching for information on the photos afterwards, or for importing into Iris, as Heidi's going to tell us about. And crucially, once you have firmed identification on your observation, the observation is then classified as research grade, and that information is uploaded to GBIF and is available to everyone to do all of the big science stuff or all the smaller science stuff with it. And that's a big deal, because not only are you sharing the information that you have gathered, in our case, at the expense of the taxpayer, so it should be out there for the people, but it means that in order to be passed through GBIF, all this data is in standardized form. And that means that we've got information which can be processed and understood by computers, and also dealt with in other databases further down the line. Another thing that you can do with it, which is to add individual observations to customizable projects. Now, what are we talking about for a project? Now, we've got various of these, and they can be fun, they can be very useful. We've, for example, got a kind of an umbrella project which gathers together all of the observations of our staff and our previous staff over the years, and it shows all of the things that we've seen. And you can present these then on a map, which can show all of the field work that we've done over the years. And since you can upload photos going back as far as you like, predating the origins of the platform, you can show all the stuff you've done, as many photos as you can be bothered to upload. It's got all of our research stuff, and presents a pretty map. Perhaps more usefully, you can use it to define particular events or projects, such as field trips. So, for example, we had a trip to Serbia in 2019, And we could define the people who were on the trip and the dates when we were there, and it gathered together all of the observations we made. And we can report on this to the people who funded us and say, look, this is where we went, this is all the things that we got. And that's very useful in and of itself. Now, since 2019, it's a great number of additional people have come in and they've checked all of the identifications of the things that we collected. And what we see is that our yield of species has actually gone down in the process, which suggests that not everyone agreed with our first identifications. And yeah, this is a feature. As I say, this the people who can everyone can identify things on iNaturalist, and so irrespective of any formal qualification, and generally it works out well. In this case, I suspect what we had is our local collaborators were defining some narrow endemics that on a wider scale people generally didn't accept, and so we lost a few in the process. And this won't always work happily. I mean, you won't always agree on taxonomic boundaries, and so the result that you come up with may or may not reflect exactly what you wanted to have in the beginning. Whether this is a bug or a feature is a matter of debate, I suspect. I think I can leave that there at this point. Here's another project that our collaborators in South Africa set up, which is to gather together observations of South African heathers, genus Erica. And this is then contributed to by a much wider net of people. It's anyone who is interested in contributing data on South African heathers. And from the list of people who have joined up, which is many more than our staff project, there are a whole bunch of people who have observed many more species and much more regularly than I ever did. And this is my research group. So this is incredibly impressive. These particularly the rare ones, you don't just trip over them. You have to do your research and hunt them down. So not only is the information that is collected here incredibly valuable, the skills that the people who have contributed to are a real resource as well. And we've been trying to take advantage of this by calling on these folks to help us. And one of the projects that we're getting contributions to is our identification aid, because these, particularly for the 700 odd Cape Erica species, the photo matching the artificial intelligence to style ID in iNaturalist just doesn't get you there, and it's not going to work. So what you need is a traditional kind of electronic key, and we've got one based on a bunch of different characters. But what it needs is some nice photos that really show the features of the plants that you want to be able to refer to. And so we've been asking people to pick out their best pictures of these rare species that they have researched and hunted down, so that we can incorporate those as individual photos in the aid, on top of the mass of data which we can then refer people to on iNaturalist through the identification aid. And we've also built in a direct link back to the original data on iNaturalist by taking the GBIF data. This is then all this research grade observations that have already kind of passed muster through the identification process and been ported to this open data repository. A whole lot of other data goes in there, including herbarium records, and we've taken a download of all of that data and filtered it to try and get to remove the worst of the errors which tend to slip into GBIF, and then presenting it on our own map, but with this metadata, including the link back to iNaturalist, so that if you see something strange, you can click on that link, go back, fix the primary data, change the ID, for example, point out a locality which is obviously wrong, and then the next time we refresh the data for our ID aid, hopefully the data will be better and more. And so this is a way of really pushing people to help us to get the data which everyone can share to be better. So we've got this marvelous means of collecting information, there it goes onto the iNaturalist platform. And here I'm showing is the all-important export button to get the data out. And it's at this point where the link between the data on iNaturalist to the database that you want to get it into is so important. And this is where Heidi is going to take over.
Hello, everyone. My name is Heidi. I will try to explain how we take the data from our field trips into Iris. And our aim is often seeds that we collect for index Seminum. So also show you how to import them directly into the store module and how they are visible again back to our iNaturalist when we have the web store on index Seminum. But after recording all this data, you take an export of the project. You first you define the project that Mike told us about, and for instance, a year will be a way to define it. So, and also iNaturalist has lots of information available for you to import of experience too much. So I made this picture of my export table because if anyone wants to do this, I can recommend you to try out with the ones I've ticked off now, because I've been working a lot with this. And in order to make something useful for Iris, you need just the precise information. Mike briefly said that there are some defined fields that we could make, that the observation fields. So if you want more information for your data, as for instance, altitude or who was there together with you when you were collecting and stuff, you can actually make a lot of your own fields that you add to the observation. Most of these things you need is like date. We use this URL for iNaturalist that I will show you later, how we go back to iNaturalist from Iris again. Tags, as Mike said, we will use to sort out the index Seminum seeds, because when we go out, we often make herbarium material. We take seeds for our own use, for our red list seed banking project, index Seminum. So we have lots of things that we collect seeds or plant material for. So we use this tag then to sort out the different imports for the different purposes. And also there are a lot of fields for place. We want in Iris to have the country, the county, municipality, and location. So that's why we have so many fields here for place from iNaturalist. There are also lots of fields for taxon extras, but most of the information needed is in this scientific name field. So if you want to do this, I recommend that you actually look at this presentation and try it out with these fields first. So this is not that easy to see, but the point is that the report then we get out of iNaturalist is almost identical to the report we could import to the stock items in Iris. So what I've done here is mostly to change the headlines of the report. So if you really are prepared to know what to import into Iris, is kind of nothing to do with the data. And that was one of the points that Mike had, that we really don't want to sit down and put in those data manually due to errors, due to time. Also, it's so much better now to just import them. But in addition to the report from iNaturalist, we have some columns that we need to add, like the store code. In our store in Iris, we have two different kind of stores. We have the index Seminum store and we have a local store where we record our seeds that we store for own purposes and stuff. So we need to assign all these to the index Seminum store. And on the end here is also some information for Iris, like material type, the origin, like this is spontaneous seeds, in-store, wild collected, and so on. But most of these are like self-explanatory. And the tag thing was also here, because from the report from iNaturalist, you can see the third column is tag list. You can see that these are for different purposes. So what we do is just to filter out the ones for index Seminum to gain the lower list. So then we take the import for Iris, and in the import, you can see this is import to stock items and not in general, because when we collect a lot of seeds for index Seminum, we really don't include them in Iris as accessions. So these records has only the stock number, and you can see the column with accession is open, and we create these seeds outside the regular database until maybe we decide that some of them are taken into our collection, and then they get accession numbers. It's probably a discussion of why we do that, but this is how we've done it all. So yeah, all information here now is the information going back to iNaturalist. So nothing of this was added into Iris. Yeah, so the URL to iNaturalist is also included, and that's again how to go back to iNaturalist from Iris again. So 73% of you doesn't use these modules. So what's happening is that you have in Iris, you have a store of lots of seeds. They can be in or out, but when you're doing your index Seminum, you make a choice from that store, which one of these are going into my index Seminum. So you kind of pick off the available seeds and say, this is what I want to offer for index Seminum this year, and that will be the catalog. So when you create the catalog, that's like creating an index Seminum. So after importing the information into the stock items and then pick off that you want these on the store catalog, the picture looks like this. And again, these are only the data from iNaturalist then taken over to the catalog from stock items. So after you have this press finalized and you have a new index Seminum, you can offer these seeds on the web store. So next is this year's our index Seminum is closed now, but this is just for an example. So this is how it looks. So when it comes to the seeds, it's the part 1 collected from spontaneous plants. So all this information going down here is directly then important from iNaturalist. So the thing here is that I also have the job that I am going through index Seminums that's coming in. And if I read through index Seminum, I want to know more about this species. Maybe I don't really know anything about this, but maybe this is something for my garden. So then I often copy the name and Google to see pictures or look for a distribution map in GBIF and look up all this information about the seeds. And it's taking some time. So with this small circle, it's with the information sign on it in our index Seminum. If you click that, then you go into back to an iNaturalist. If you are in our store and press that, you go directly back to the iNaturalist observation that was done during seed collection. You can look at the picture. Of course, you see the flower in seed, but you can look if there are more pictures. You can also look at the ID tree. So when we were out collecting seeds from this, we also put this into the Iris export project that Mike explained about. It's to have the index Seminum tag and some additional information that we wrote into iNaturalist. But also, and most useful for me, if I'm to order seeds from this plant, I go into the map for me now, it's maybe not that interesting to see that small dot in the middle of Norway. But if I zoom out, it gives me kind of an impression of the distribution. This is, of course, according to iNaturalist. So there may be areas that's not visited too much, but still I get an impression that this is Scandinavian, all European, some places around the world. So it really gives me a nice information if I have to choose whether I should grow these seeds in my garden or not. So the aim for me was to say that it's really useful for also, not only for us that's gathering the data and including it, but it's also very good information for the people that are ordering seeds from your index Seminum. Okay, Mike?
Blended. Now, okay, the point I wanted to make here was, so now we get into the kind of the some of the problematics of the whole process, and it's where we kind of maybe talk about some of the issues and think about potential solutions. So one of the kind of features of iNaturalist is that they really hide their taxonomy. They clearly want to avoid iNaturalist becoming a platform for people to shout about species delimitation, and who can blame them? I mean, this is something really you want to do in person with preferably with a beer. You don't want to start doing that in comments on iNaturalist. The downside to that is that when you export all the data, you get the names, and the scientific name will be kind of standardized, but what it won't have is the authority. And that means that you do have the potential for getting tripped up by synonyms. And maybe this isn't such a big issue as it used to be, but it could be. And you do have to kind of dig, if you're on iNaturalist, to go through various links to find out where's the origin of the name, and eventually it will take you to maybe to Plants of the World Online, and you can see, okay, it's that one. But if you're incorporating the data into your database, you want to have all the names information and to be absolutely crystal clear about that from the start. So that's clearly needs to be passed through to come through properly. The initial problems that we were having were particularly when there was a plant that we were bringing into the collections for the first time, which wasn't so rare. And how does one then build this into the database? And since we started using this, we've been given this marvelous new tool to be able to import stuff better from iNaturalist export data into IrisBG, for which we're very grateful, and this is great. However, there is no magic wand that IrisBG can wave to kind of get us past issues in names and species delimitations and disagreements on species delimitations and synonymy and that kind of thing. And so one of the kind of the issues that we are particularly stuck with now is bringing new data into the database that we have kind of inherited through various hands and of editing since we've had the Iris for our collections in the gardens. And this database kind of includes all sorts of weird and wonderful things, probably information that doesn't belong in the taxon database and is rather accession level, all sorts of informal names for taxa, even on top of the taxa that we might want to recognize and use that the people who are in charge of Plants of the World Online don't agree with and would rather sink into synonymy. All sorts of things that make this process somewhat complicated. And that's a shame, particularly because ideally what you want to do is bring your database into contact with all the other sources of information from the outside world. Things like the IUCN Red List, linked information from the World Flora Online, Catalogue of Life, all this kind of stuff that's you might want to be able to search through your collection and find all your threatened species, for example. And maybe you don't want to have to update that after 10 years when a lot of the assessments have gone out of date or been updated. You certainly don't want to be doing that by hand. And establishing this link with external databases really means associating you're identifying unambiguously your taxa. And one of the kind of potential ways to get around this, which applies to both data that you could bring in newly into your database, and also, particularly in our case, then all of the data that is already there, could be to take greater advantage of the various permanent identifiers that are out there. Now, it's already the case in IRIS that you can click on a field for an identifier and, for example, associate a taxa with a record on World Flora Online. And that's great. That will bring in the information that's on WFO, and then you know what you've got. But that is painful to go through a whole database like that. And these different kinds of identifiers have different flavors. The IPNI ones associated to names. If you've got a WFO identifier, it has an implicit taxonomy in there as well. You will, for example, if you're dealing with various different species of what is sorbus in the broadest sense, you'll have different people who have classified these under various different genera, so that it's not going to be entirely clear necessarily which one you're choosing, or in fact it will be clear which one you're choosing and it's a different one to other people, or a different one to a different source of information. So the kind of the bottom line there I was thinking was that whether it's might be possible to extend the use of identifiers to help clean up this process, to help enable this process, and whether we could use this in some way to be able to get through our database of names and tidy it up. And I think this is probably the point at which I should stop waffling, because I've come to the end, and I'd really like for other people to come and bring in their own information. So I'm going to end up on this slide again. This is where you can get our presentation. We'll stop.
Thank you both, Mike and Heidi, for sharing with the community all the work that you're doing and challenging us as well to continue to improve what we're providing. So thanks again, and thank you all for coming. See you next time.